Hello, hello, book babes. So we are on chapter 6, June, which in a 12-month calendarly year puts us exactly dead center middle, which is crazy to think that we're already flying through halfway. Can you even?
It's exciting.
It really is. So this chapter for June is Make Time for Friends. So focusing on friendship. Our highlighted bullet points are remember birthdays, be generous, show up, don't gossip, and make 3 new friends. So I love it. Much like the marriage chapter, I kind of turned to this one and I kind of went, ooh. I tell myself the false narrative that I am not a good friend. I don't have that elementary or middle school friends still. I do still keep in contact with a lot of the girls that I grew up with. But as far as I haven't seen a lot of them in years. I'm not super close with any of them. And so when I read this, I was just like, oh, is this going to be a chapter that's just calling me out hardcore? But I honestly felt okay about it.
I love that. Well, I can relate to that because my 2 closest friends growing up, my best friends, I love them so much. They have my heart, but neither of them live close. And especially we have very different lifestyles and personalities. So sometimes I feel like I'm not connecting enough or I'm dropping the ball in our friendship because I don't go above and beyond. And this chapter was a great reminder for me that the little things actually are the big things. And it's easy to get busy with life and forget that. But how simple is it to send a text? How simple is it to say happy birthday? How simple is it to send a Christmas card? And so I really walked away from this chapter with kind of, honestly, for being honest, I haven't done Christmas cards since my child was a baby. But after I read this chapter, I got on and I ordered family pictures and I ordered cards so that my kids could decorate them, and they still aren't sent out, and it's after Christmas, but I'm getting those things sent because the person on the receiving end, they don't really care what date it's sent. The kids colored them. I'm going to write a message on the back of every single one of them so that they know that they matter to me. And it seems so simple, and it's going to take hard work on my end. But I want to send those messages so that that other person on the receiving end knows that I care. And I think if I walked away with anything powerful from this chapter, that was the biggest thing, that the simple things matter the most.
And then she even just touches right away on just she focused on a few main things for the month, which was strengthening old friendships, deepening existing friendships, and making new friends. And I think that was just really powerful because I am the one that drops the ball. I definitely am the one that doesn't maybe reach out as much as they should. I'm the one that I'm the notorious one where if I actually show up to the plans that we make, it's amazing because I'm always the notorious of the back out person. And so I love that she starts off something as remembering birthdays.
Yep.
Because it's strengthening the bond, and at bare minimum, you can remember a birthday. And especially with social media, Facebook makes it so easy because they tell you every single day, they send you the notification of whose birthdays it is that day. And I'm not saying that you can go a little above and beyond leaving a Facebook wall post, but at least go and genuinely and authentically message that person. Ideally, if you have their text message or a voice memo them and be like, hey, happy birthday. I truly hope you're having the best day. I'm so thankful you're in my life. And she just starts with so simple as a happy birthday. And I really love that.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that was one of those things, collecting the birthdays, keeping a log of it, making sure that it's up to date and you have everybody in there. That's hard work. And it's that nagging task that you have to complete. But once you get it done, how much better are you going to feel if every year you're like, oh, hey, I didn't forget. It just feels good to recognize other people,
And then in her very tactical way, she says that she uses happybirthdays.com so that way it keeps track of all of them for her. And a friend suggested that he also uses it for other significant dates in their children's life. That way they can remember something. And I thought that that was a really cute way and tactical way of like keeping all those in one spot, and also like going a little bit farther in the parenting aspect and remembering those cute things for your kids too. Like, you know, maybe as they're getting older, like when they lost a tooth, they brought home that A in math, they took their first steps, wherever your kid is, just remembering those little things for them, you know, their first school play. I think that having those days in there too is really cute.
Absolutely. So the next little section she has is be generous. And I thought this was cool because a lot of times when you think be generous, you think that you have to spend money, or at least I think that, right? Like I have to give something, I have to buy something, I have to get something. But it's not always about that. I think it's really playing to our own strengths. And in here, she talked about her strengths is helping people think big, bringing people together, and contributing in her way, and cutting people slack. And I have that circled because I thought that was really cool to look for other strategies than just giving or buying or gifting, on ways that she can help people, like by bringing people together and connecting them or helping them think big. And I can relate to that because I am such a big thinker, and I love, like, I start geeking out when someone has a small, simple idea. Hannah in our book club, my ideas start firing, and I'm like, we got to do this and this and this and this. And it's just, it brings me joy to see other people be brought joy with ideas that maybe they wouldn't have thought about to begin with.
And that's so funny because she even talks about like the book project in one of those, thinking big and being generous, which is to me just those little God winks. And I think that in friendships, I know that we talked in the marriage thing about your love languages. I think that translates to friends too. 100%. It translates to your kids, to your friends, and knowing that how those people respond. Like I'm definitely a words of affirmation people, and recently my youngest daughter had a surgery, and you had actually reached out that morning and were like, hey, I'm thinking of you this morning. I really hope everything goes good. Let me know if you need anything. And to me, like, it almost brought me to tears because that was literally you in a friendship showing up for me and it being generous. You didn't have to take that time in the morning, but you did. And that is definitely like how I receive love. Yeah. And so I think it's important to remember that just like in relationships and marriage, friendships, you want to show up, and it's kind of almost the same thing. It's the same intentionality. It's the same of knowing how your best friend wants you to show up in their life. And I love that she talks about, like, you know, bringing people together and, you know, helping people think big, and those tactical things in this chapter too.
Well, I love that because it reminds me of one of my friends. She has a strength of remembering everything. She remembers important dates, like even if they're months out. Like she's just really good at remembering that stuff. And I am not. I'm not good at remembering when things are going to happen. So I'm trying to take a piece from her playbook because it matters to me when she remembers stuff. It fills my heart when she can remember that. And so I want to be more responsible in when I'm having a conversation with someone, of mentally jotting something down, like pulling up my phone and being like, okay, they said the surgery was on this date. Make sure that you reach out. They said that they're doing this here. Make sure that you check in. Even if I have to do it my own way, of like literally putting it in my phone because I can't remember it, making sure that I'm making that special effort. And one of the things that I have highlighted in here, it says one of the best ways to make yourself happy is to make other people happy. One of the best ways to make other people happy is to be happy yourself. And again, it is like that circle of happiness and how it creates this domino effect around other people. I thought that was super, just, I don't know, really good.
Definitely. And then going into just like kind of how you said, like showing up for those people. She has a quote from Woody Allen, and I'm a quote person, and you'll realize that throughout all of our books. If there's a quote in there, I am here for it. And from Woody Allen, it says 80% of success is showing up. Mm-hmm. And that's so true. And you hear about that all the time. It's not about having this natural gift. It's not about being the most bubbly person or the best person or whatever. It's really just your consistency and how you show up every single day. And the people that are showing up, giving it 100 day in, day out, not just on the sporadic Monday and then the following Wednesday. It's the people that are showing up all the time that are really going to succeed. And I love that she ties that even into friendship. A big part of friendship is showing up. Unless you make consistent efforts, your friendships aren't going to survive. And that is the lesson that I've had to learn in real time, because I am a person, if I am going through hard things, I go through it by myself. And so I will isolate, and you cannot be an isolated person and be a good friend at the same time. You cannot be.
But I
And
think
so that's something.
so many people do that. So many people want to hide. And whether it's a shame story, whether it's a, a story of whatever story they're telling in their heads, we don't want other people to show up for us, or we want to create this kind of guilt story they didn't show up for us. But the thing is, we forget that other people are worried about their own lives and their own struggles. And so it's really this fine line. And so I love that you're sharing that vulnerability right there.
And it was definitely, I have a good friend, and unfortunately she lives quite a few states away. And we were talking recently, and she is my definition of a friend that shows me so much grace, because she has been there for me in all seasons of life through my like reclusive, and she just is always there. And she unfortunately knows how I am. And I'm just really blessed to have found someone like that, that accepts that sometimes I'm not there. And we recently had a conversation of how she watched my journey with Lily in NICU over social media, and how she always wanted to reach out, but she just couldn't imagine like how hard that was. And I thought back, I didn't reach out to anyone during that time. And it was just kind of because most of the shock, I didn't want to put that on anybody, because I think there's kind of a sense of embarrassment when you're going through something hard. You don't want to shoulder it off on somebody else. And it's kind of a hard spot to be, because they can't help. You know what I mean? As much as I'm sure like everyone that I would talk to would want to be like, oh, I hope she comes home. That just, sometimes it just doesn't feel like enough. And so I never wanted to put that on anybody. And she's like, you could have put that on me. And I think it's just the reminder that you can show up during those times and let your friends be there for you during those hard times too.
Absolutely. I think it's important to let them be there during the hard times, like, I guess for me on the back end as a friend, like I would want someone else to know that I'm there for them. Maybe I can't fix the problem. Maybe I don't know what to say, but I can love, and I can love big, even if it's just something small. And so letting people into your world, again, it's like a big vulnerability, and it's scary and it's terrifying. But I think like that's part of being a good friend, right? Like just trusting
just like
enough.
on that flip side is like not just how you show up, but letting them show up for you too.
Absolutely.
And that was something that maybe like isn't as bold and highlightable in that chapter, but that was like kind of where I took it away, was like, you do have people in your life that would love to show up as a friend to you if you would let them. And so maybe some other listener is like me and isolates, and maybe just needs to hear like, let your friends show up for you too.
Absolutely. Because they will. And it'll be amazing when they do, and you'll feel so loved. So then the next little section is don't gossip. And hey, I don't know who else is like, okay, gossiping. Like it's so. Go ahead, take it.
It was when we were doing our Book Babe bi-weekly call. One of our group members also talked about how this was really what she took away in the entire book, was the don't gossip. She mentioned that she is a nurse. And so she works with a lot of female coworkers, and something about females and coworkers, and when you get in groups, it is sometimes very cliquey, and it is very easy to want to bond over being negative to somebody else. And I don't know what is about the women brain that is programmed like that, but that is just sometimes how you bond, is by tearing somebody else down. And I think that it's so hard to like read, because you're like, ooh, been there, done that, guilty of that. But I think that it's really important to call it out, and the fact that that's not going to make a good friend. And if you are gossiping and someone else is gossiping with you, they're more likely also to turn around and go gossip about you behind your back. And at the end of the day, if you want true good friendships, that's not how you make them.
Absolutely. I totally love that. And the part that I have highlighted here is what I say about other people sticks to me. Even when I talk to someone who already knows me So I do well to say only good things, which she had above described. Like, if I'm sitting here saying something negative about someone else to you, you're going to feel those negative vibes towards me because I'm the one saying it. And so it's not about that other person at all. Instead, you get this view of me as this nasty person, as this, hateful, kind of gross vibe that you're now going to connect consciously or subconsciously to me because I'm the one saying it. And that's like, whoa, if you don't want people to think that about you, maybe you shouldn't be saying it about others. And I know in our meeting, we kind of challenged our girls, like, okay, well, if someone's gossiping, what are those action steps that you're taking to step away from it? Because sometimes it's hard when you're in that situation to not be like, yeah, oh my gosh, yeah. Even if
Well,
you
and I
don't say
think
anything.
right, that's kind of like the social cue is you, especially if you maybe not even if you're just non-confrontational, but you almost have to be over confrontational to call somebody out on speaking negatively with somebody. And I think that it is extremely hard if you're not very confident in the way you feel, or maybe in your workplace, maybe you find that the person that is talking to you has worked there a lot longer. And so you don't know how to stand up for yourself, or maybe it's your mother-in-law that maybe trash talking someone else in the family, and you just don't really know how to say, hey, you shouldn't be talking like that, but you don't want to go, oh yeah, I 100% agree. And what I think I've found is I always try to play devil's advocate for that other person. So let's say a coworker comes to me and like, have you talked to Susie today? She is being just such a royal B word. I don't know what has got it in her head, but she is just walking around like she owns the place. And it would be easy in that moment to go, oh yeah, I did notice that, because you just want to kind of sweep it under the rug and hopes it goes away. But something that I try to actually be like, yeah, I did kind of realize that. I wonder if she's okay. That's kind of out of characteristic for her. I wonder if maybe she didn't get a lot of sleep. Maybe she's fighting with her husband. Maybe we should give her a little grace and maybe see how she's doing tomorrow. And I think that it kind of puts this spin on it where you're not agreeing and you're giving a person the benefit of the doubt, which I think everyone can use a lot more of. I don't think that it is I don't think everyone's actions is a constant attack to everybody else. I think sometimes we just kind of stay in our lane a little more. And I think that playing devil's advocate when somebody wants to kind of tear somebody else down puts that pressure back on them. You know what I mean? It kind of makes them look back and realize what they're saying. Yeah, because I think sometimes it's almost human nature to just babble something out. And I think, unfortunately, it's just really easy to comment on somebody else because maybe it's like the weather. It's just an easy conversation filler. And I think it challenges that person in a way that's not as non-confrontational and allows them to be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said what I just said. And it's not perfect every time, but I think that that's something tactically that I find helps gossip.
I thought that was huge when it comes to like tactics for that. So the next little section is make 3 new friends. And again, she is very, very tactical. And I love how she kind of like dives in here. Like, I don't have time to meet new people or make new friends, but that's not actually the truth. We can make time for it. But her checklist for first encounters, I absolutely loved. So number 1, smile more frequently. Number 2, actively invite others to join a conversation. Number 3, create a positive mood. Number 4, open a conversation. 5, try to look accessible and warm. Show a vulnerable side and laugh at yourself. Show a readiness to be pleased. Follow others' conversational leads and ask questions. And I actually have my highlights from when I read it the first time. They are in blue. And the one that I highlighted, I really highlighted 3, but the first one is smile more frequently. And now that I look back in time, I'm a huge introvert. I may or may not seem that way, but I've grown a lot in 5 years. I am crazy introverted. It's nuts. If I'm in a room with people, I'm gonna be the person at the back table just sitting quietly like this. But what I took away from this and what I applied to my life at the time was very simple. It's very hard for an introvert. But what I started doing was every time I went to the grocery store, I smiled at every single person who walked past me. Like eye contact and smiled. Because before, when I would go shopping, I would keep busy with my child, or I would look down at my grocery list, or I would, just stay in my lane 100%, like literally block everyone out so no one could see me. But when I read this, I didn't recognize it then, but I recognize it looking back. I made that rule for myself, is that I had to look up, connect with everybody, like eye contact, and I had to smile at them. And that has literally changed everything about who I am, about my confidence, and about how I am extroverted versus introverted right now. Like I'm still introverted, but I can smile and show up for another person. And I thought that was super, I don't know, just eye-opening for me.
I love that. I also have that one highlighted. I used to walk around our major city, Minneapolis, when I was younger and I was living with my mom. And that was something that she had instilled on me, is if you're walking by somebody on the road, make sure that you smile and nod or say hi or something. But I always acknowledge the other person, because you don't know if that person just really needs to be acknowledged.
Yep.
And it seemed like really simple, like, well, why should I? And then when you think about it, it's because maybe that person really needed that. Maybe that person is just having a horrible day. They're not seen. They're like, nobody on this world possibly sees me, cares about me or anything. And you're walking down and you see this girl and she smiles and she says, hey, have a great day. And you're just like, oh, thanks. And you smile. And maybe that's the first time you've smiled all day. Like you just don't know how much that needs. And it kind of ties into try to look accessible and warm. And I feel like it's really funny that the term resting bitch face is not in here. Because when I read that, that's literally, I put RBF, because how many of us sit there and if we're not paying attention to what our face looks like, we look like we're mean mugging about to kill somebody. And I think that just being conscious of how you're perceiving yourself, I think was a huge thing also.
I loved it. I love all of these. They're so tactical, like we said. And so just kind of opening yourself up to that, that's how you make the new friends, right? Of course, everyone you come in contact with may not be your next bestie, but it could be someone that is just there, right? Like an acquaintance. You can lift their spirits. And I love that you said that about like walking down the street, because maybe you don't need them in your life for the rest of your life, but maybe for that second they needed you, or maybe for that second you needed them. And I think that was super powerful.
Well, and it kind of like makes way about, you don't know who you're impacting in your life. Maybe, you go to a coffee shop on a regular basis and the barista just thinks that you are the sweetest thing. Or maybe you go and you get your gas station and you see that tenant at the same gas station every time you've gone in there. Or you go through a fast food and you say the same manager. Those are people that would notice if you stop showing up, and you don't even think twice about them. They might not even know your name, but you're impacting their life. And I think sometimes it's important to remember that maybe it's not just those significant people. Sometimes it's the neighbor, or it's, the grocery store clerk or something like that, that people that are there in the background, but still there nonetheless.
Yeah, for sure. I loved it. So in here, since she shares all of this with her blog, like on her blog, a lot of her readers come back and like answer her questions and like think along with her. And I found really, really interesting, she was talking about her 12 commandments, and she had people starting to send in their commandments of what they were applying to their life. And I just thought that this was so interesting, because what I noticed was some of them kind of contradicted each other. And I think like that's the beauty in the Happiness Project, is you find what works for you and what speaks to you, and you learn so much about you. And I really highlighted it all because I thought it was so interesting that we can learn so much from each individual person.
And then, speaking of opposing advice, one of the things that she has posted as advice is just say yes, just say no, do it now, wait, one thing at a time, do everything all at once, always strive to do your best, but remember the 80-20 rule.
The struggle, right? And I love that, because it's like, listen, you can have both extremes, right? There's both extremes kind of people, and you can say this or you can say that, but really you have to find where you fit along that little line.
Definitely. And then she just kind of as we talked about, this is the 6-month point, so the halfway. And then she just kind of recaps and she says, what I noticed that my happiness made it easier for me to be patient, cheerful, kind, generous, and all the other qualities I was trying to cultivate. I found it easier to keep my resolutions, laugh off my annoyances, and have enough energy for fun.
Who wouldn't want that? Right?
And then she definitely says, in some ways, in fact, I had made myself less happy because I'd been more made aware of my faults. I felt more disappointed with myself when I slipped up. My shortcomings started up at me as reproachfully from the page, reminding me happiness doesn't always make you feel happy.
Hands down. And I think that kind of goes hands in hand with your own shame stories, right? Like what I hear when she reads that is like, oh, she's shaming herself. Like she's not proud because she recognizes her faults. And I think it's important as a human to recognize your faults and acknowledge your feelings, but not shame yourself for it, and instead be like, okay, this is it. And if I don't like it, then what can I do to change it? Right? Like I'm very, very big on self-reflection. And I think a lot of us get stuck on, we see what we did, but we don't realize like that's in the past and we can actually move forward from it. And so I think like that's it's eye-opening that she calls herself out like, oh my gosh, this is stressing me out because I realize I'm really sucking at this thing. And the powerful thing is she gets to keep going and she keeps to keep growing from this point.
100% agree. And then I just think that she just covers it so well, just reminding herself that my resolutions are making me happier, and that I know that at the end, that's the overall goal.
Absolutely.
And I just think that there's just such a powerful, looking at the 6 months, just constantly keeping yourself in check. We talk a lot about auditing your time, auditing your energy, being intentional. And I think that 6 month is such a good spot to just look back and be like, what is working? What isn't? What truly brought me joy? And what are those self-discipline habits that I'm going for and continuing on with?
Absolutely. 100%. Gosh, could you even imagine 6 months into your happiness journey, how you're going to feel compared to today?
And just imagine what happens in 6 months. We're ending 2020 in real time in about 24 hours. So I just imagine what 6 months of 2020 did. Imagine what 6 more months of 2021 can do if you were really intentional in auditing your time and just figuring out what those faults were and not shaming or dwelling in them, but saying what action steps am I going to take to improve upon it. And if you need that, this book has all of the tactical things to do that. And I think that's why this is such a good book going into 2021.
Absolutely. So that's what we have for chapter 6. I'm so glad that you are here. I hope you're loving this book as much as I am. And we'll be back to cover chapter 7 soon. Thanks for joining us.